know this is something a little different than usual, but it proclaims to Christianity. These are some words by Billy Graham. Based on his background and era, uh, Jesus what background and era. Jesus was a Middle Eastern man with dark skin, dark hair, and brown eyes. Uh, Similar to appearance to contemporary Jewish residents of the region. Jesus Christ was a Jewish resident of Roman controlled Judea, born in a region connecting Asia, Africa, and Europe. Billy Graham stated Jesus had dark skin similar to people of this day, noting that Christ belongs to all people and all cultures than one specific nationality. Graham, after 3 points of combat the idea that Christianity is a white man's religion and to emphasize its universal nature. God belongs to everybody. It's always been controversial, as I've always pictured him as Israeli or long haired, dark complected. I mean, he was a carpenter, so he spent a lot of time outside. So he was going to be dark. Talking about the man who carried Jesus' cross for him, Simon. He he was a black man. He was a black man, and we shouldn't be prejudiced towards any color because because of this is the Christian religion is not a white man's religion. It's a it's a you know and we've done so much mean things to people and want to and being prejudiced and disposing of people because they're Jews or they're like the Holocaust. I mean, these things are not. This is just in the 20th century. It was 60, 70, 80 years ago. It was like it was yesterday. And of course Hitler and all his people were nuts. They wanted to exterminate the Jews, and they wanted to exterminate all the ministers because they were preaching God about God under the table. Nobody could see it, and if they caught them, they put them in concentration camps. I mean, uh, Hitler wanted to be God, and he wanted everybody to worship him. And a lot of people don't. I don't have a problem with Jews. Jews have their way of believing. I have nothing against Jews. Jews are I believe in a way they're a Christian. They just don't believe in Jesus. They believe that because Jesus, they just don't believe in him. They were always the ones that wanted to question him, and Jews are just different. I don't deny Christ. I feel denying Christ is just, if you denied Christ or God, you, you basically you're basically killing yourself, because without him you can't live. You can't live a decent life. Um, you know, I wanted to preach out of Matthew here. I want to talk about Jesus' crucifixion and um, uh, you know, he died for us. He did it for us. He didn't do it for himself. He did it for us. You know, and he told his apostles before he was to be crucified and killed, that you know, don't hang out and do your apostolic duties until I come back. That way you'll until you receive the Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit hadn't been put on the apostles till about 5 days after Jesus had rose from the dead. You know, and Jesus is betrayed and arrested, and even as Jesus said this, Judas was one of the 12 disciples, arrived with a crowd of men armed with swords and clubs. They had been sent by the leading priest and the elders of the people. The traitors, Judas, had given them a prearranged signal. You will know which one to arrest when I greet him with a kiss. So Judas came straight to Jesus. Greetings, Rabbi, he exclaimed, and gave him the kiss. Jesus said, my friend, go ahead and do what you have come for. And the others grabbed Jesus and arrested him. But one of the men with Jesus pulled out his sword, struck the high priest's slave, slashing off his ear. Jesus said, put away your sword, Jesus told him. Those who use the sword will die by the sword. Don't you realize that I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us, and he would send them instantly? But if I did, how would the scriptures be fulfilled that describe what must happen now? And Jesus said to the crowd, am I some dangerous revolutionary that you come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why don't you arrest me in the temple? I was there teaching every day. But this is all happening to fulfill the words of the prophets as recorded in the scriptures. At that point, all the disciples deserted him and fled. And this is Jesus before the council. Then the people who had arrested Jesus led him to the home of Cephas, the high priest, where the teachers of religious law and elders had gathered. Meanwhile, Peter followed him at a distance and came to a high priest's courtyard. He went in, sat with the guards, and waited to see how it would all end. Inside, the leading priest and the entire high council were trying to find witnesses who would lie about Jesus so they could put him to death. But even though they found many agreed to give false witness. They could not use anyone's testimony. Finally, 2 men came forward who declared, "This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days." Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, "Well, aren't you going to answer these charges? What do you have to say for yourself?" But Jesus remained silent. Then and high priest said to him, "I demand in the name of the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Jesus replied, "You have said it, and in the future you will see the Son of Man seated in the place of power at God's right hand and coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes to show his honor and said, "Blasphemy! Why do we need other witnesses? You have all heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?" "Guilty," they shouted. "He deserves to die." Then they began to spit in Jesus' face and beat him with their fists, and some slapped him, jeering, "Prophesy to us, you Messiah, who hit you that time?" Peter denies Jesus, which was predicted by Jesus. Meanwhile, Peter was sitting outside the courtyard. A servant girl came over and said to him, "You are one of those those with Jesus the Galilean." But Peter denied it in front of everyone. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Later, out by the gate, another servant girl noticed him and said to him, those standing around, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again, Peter denied it this time with an oath. "I don't even know the man," he said. A little later, some of the other bystanders came over to Peter and said, "You must be one of them. We can tell by your Galilean accent." Peter swore a curse on me if I am lying. "I don't know the man." And immediately the rooster crowed. Suddenly Jesus' words flashed through Peter's mind. "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times that you even know me." And he went away weeping bitterly. You know, Judas hangs himself. Very early in the morning, the leading priests and the elders of the people met again and laid plans to putting Jesus to death. Then they bound him, led him away, and took him to Pilate, the Roman governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, realized that Jesus had been condemned to die, he was filled with remorse. So he took the 30 pieces of silver back to the leading priests and the elders. "I have sinned," he declared, "for I have betrayed an innocent man." He said, I said, "What do we care?" They retorted. "That's your problem." Then Judas threw the silver coins down in the temple and went out and hanged himself. The leading priest picked up hold on a minute here, got 2 pages together again. I love thin sheets of paper. Like stuck like glue. The coins. "It wouldn't be right to put this money in the temple treasury," they said, "since it was payment for murder." After some discussion, they finally decided to buy the potter's field that made it into a cemetery for foreigners. That is why the field is still called the Field of Blood. This fulfilled the prophecy of Jeremiah that says, "They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price at which he was valued by the people of Israel, and purchased the potter's field as the Lord directed." Jesus' trial before Pilate. Pilate. Now Jesus was standing before Pilate and the Roman governor. Are you the king of the Jews? And the governor asked him. Jesus replied, You have said it. But when the leading priests and the elders made their accusations against him, Jesus remained silent. Don't you hear all these charges they are bringing against you? Pilate demanded. But Jesus made no response to any of the charges, much to the governor's surprise. Now it was the governor's custom each year during Passover celebration to release one prisoner to the crowd, anyone they wanted. This year there was a notorious prisoner, a man named Barabbas. As the crowds gathered before Pilate's house that morning, he asked them, Which one do you want me to release to you? Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Messiah? He knew very well that the religious leaders had arrested Jesus out of envy. Just then Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat. His wife sent him this message, Leave the innocent man alone. I suffered through a terrible nightmare about him last night. Meanwhile, the leading priest and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barnabas to be released and for Jesus to be put to death. So the governor asked again, Which of these two do you want me to release to you? The crowd shouted back, Barabbas. Pilate responded, Then what should I do with Jesus, who is called the Messiah? They shouted back, Crucify him. Why? Pilate demanded. What crime has he committed? But the mob roared even louder, Crucify him. Pilate saw he wasn't getting anywhere and that a riot was developing, so he sent for a bowl of water to wash his hands before the crowd, saying, I am innocent of this man's blood. The responsibility is yours. And all the people yelled back, We will take responsibility for his death, we and our children. So Pilate released Barabbas to them. He ordered Jesus flogged with a lead-tipped whip, then turned him over to the Roman soldiers to be crucified. The soldiers mocked Jesus. Some of the governor's soldiers took Jesus into their headquarters and called out the entire regiment. They stripped him and pulled a scarlet robe on him. They put a scarlet robe on him. They wove thorn branches into a crown and put it on his head. And they placed a reed stick in his right hand as a scepter. Then they knelt before him in mockery and taunted, Hail, King of the Jews! And they spit on him and grabbed the stick and struck him on the head with it. When they were finally tired of mocking him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him again, and then they led him away to be crucified. Along the way, they came across a man named Simon. And this goes back to Simon was a black man who was from Cyrene, and the soldiers forced him to carry Jesus' cross, and they went out to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. The soldiers gave Jesus wine mixed with bitter gall, but when he had tasted it, he refused to drink it. After they had nailed him to the cross, the soldiers gambled for his clothes by throwing dice. Then they sat around and kept guard as he hung there. A sign was fastened above Jesus' head announcing the charge against him. It read, This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. 2 revolutionaries were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. The people passing shouted abuse, shaking their heads in mockery. Look at you now, they yelled at him. You said you were going to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Well then, if you are the Son of God, save yourself and come down from the cross. The leading priests, the teachers of the religious law, and the elders also mocked Jesus. He saved others, they scoff, but he can't save himself. So he is the King of Israel, is he? Let him come down from the cross right now, and we will believe in him. He trusted God, so let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, I am the Son of God. Even the revolutionaries who were crucified with him ridiculed him in the same way. At noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. At about 3 o'clock, Jesus called out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you abandoned me? Some of the bystanders misunderstood and thought he was calling for the prophet Elijah. One of them ran and filled a sponge with sour wine, holding it up to him on a reed stick so he could drink. But the rest said, Wait, let's see whether Elijah comes to save him. And Jesus shouted out again, and he released his spirit. At that moment, the curtain in the sanctuary of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, rocks split apart, and tombs opened. The bodies of many godly men and women who had died were raised from the dead. They left the cemetery after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city of Jerusalem and appeared to many people. A Roman officer and the other soldiers at the crucifixion were terrified by the earthquake and all that had happened. They said, This man truly was the Son of God. And many women who had come from Galilee with Jesus to care for him were watching from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of James and John, and the son of Zebedee. As evening approached, Joseph, a rich man from Arimathea, who had become a follower of Jesus, went to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. And Pilate issued an order to release it to him. Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a long sheet of clean linen cloth. He placed it in his own new tomb, which had been carved out of the rock. Then he rolled a great stone across the entrance and left both Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were sitting across from the tomb and watching. The guard of the tomb. The next day on the Sabbath, leading priests and Pharisees went to see Pilate. They told him, Sir, we remember what that deceiver once said while he was still alive. After 3 days I will arise from the dead. So we request that you seal the tomb until the third day. This will prevent his disciples from coming and stealing his body and then telling everyone he was raised from the dead. If that happens, we'll be worse off than we were at first. Pilate replied, Take guards and secure it the best you can. So they sealed the tomb and posted guards to protect it. Early on Sunday morning, as the new day was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went out to visit the tomb. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, rolled aside the stone, and sat on it. His face shone like lightning, and his clothing was white as snow. The guards shook with fear when they saw him, and they fell into a dead faint. Then the angel spoke to the women. Don't be afraid, he said. I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead, just as he said would happen. Come see where this body was lying, and now go quickly and tell his disciples that he has risen from the dead, and he is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. Remember what I have told you. The woman ran quickly from the tomb. They were frightened, but also filled with great joy, and they rushed to give the disciples the angel's message, and as they went, Jesus met them, greeting them, and they ran to him, grasping his feet and worshiping him. Then Jesus said to them, "Don't be afraid. Go tell my brothers to leave for Galilee, and they will see me there." As the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and told the leading priests what had happened. A meeting with the elders was called, and they decided to give the soldiers a large bribe. They told the soldiers, "You must say Jesus' disciples came during the night while we were sleeping, and they stole his body. If the governor hears about it, we'll stand up for you so you won't get in trouble." So the guard accepted the bribe and said what they were told to say. Their story spread widely among the Jews, and they still tell it today. The Great Commission. Then the 11 disciples left for Galilee, going to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some of them doubted. Jesus came and told his disciples, "I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore go, make disciples of all nations, baptize them in the name of the Father and in the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." They didn't have the Holy Spirit until he came back. Holy Spirit, a lot of the apostles were in hiding because they were afraid that they would be done the same, they would die like Jesus. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, hold on a minute here, make sure I got the right stuff. I don't want to get things confused. And he said, the region of Galilee, preaching in the synagogue and casting out demons. Jesus heals a man with leprosy. Let's see. Maybe I did get a little too far. After Jesus had been descended back into, before he was descended, he come to give the Holy Spirit. He blew it in onto his apostles. At that time, the Holy Spirit really didn't exist. I mean, it might have existed, but